things to share with you about when you hire a helicopter to come on your property and do anything. And so I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I'm going to go ahead and bring him up. And there's a few things I might add in as he's going through this, but I'm going to go ahead and let you meet Chandler Bartley.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. So, good morning. My name's Chandler Bartley, and I guess until about 2 years ago, I couldn't have told you the difference between a fallow buck and an axis deer. So I have very, very little knowledge as it pertains to the exotic wildlife business. So in a way, I'm kind of probably learning as much as anybody here today. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. But I do know a few things about helicopters. I've been passionate my entire life about aviation, specifically about helicopters. I'm rated in both airplanes and helicopters, and I'm a flight instructor and teach, as Brian mentioned, I've been giving him some lessons over the last year or so. So he asked me to come down, so just give you a brief overview of what we do. So I work for Tango 82 Aviation. We're based just up the road in Fredericksburg, a little less than an hour drive from here. Company was started by a gentleman named Darren Flores. If you all know him, he goes by Chavi. And he's been doing it for at least 15 years, if not more, been in the business. And so he started just himself, and now we've got up to 9 or 10 employees. We have 5, 6 helicopters, and we travel, I would have said all over the state of Texas, but we've been now kind of all over the country, dabbling in a few different areas. So a few of the things that we do, like I said, we're located up in Fredericksburg. We do flight instruction. I'm the flight instructor there. We do charter work, so carrying people from place to place. But really, what we do and the bread and butter of our business, and why I'm here today to talk, is we're in exotic game capture. And so, for those of you not familiar with what we do, someone like Brian or another client will call and want their animals caught, and that's where we come in. And so we'll either shoot a net gun out of the helicopter or a tranquilizer dart, depending on the animal. We'll then safely secure those animals on the ground, hook them up in a sling bag, and then haul those back to the trailer with one of our helicopters. And so it's a very unique business. I find it pretty much all the time when I'm trying to describe what we do outside of a venue like this. It's very difficult when somebody asks me what I do, and it's kind of a 10-minute explanation. So fortunately for those of you in the crowd here, you kind of know what I'm talking about. So that's some of the things that we do. Again, game capture, we do pig hunts, tours, instruction, and then we do have the charter flight business. So I want to preface, before I make some of these comments, I am not a lawyer, okay, so I'm not involved in the legal space at all. So any of these things that we're going to talk about, don't take these as legal advice. I would definitely consult your attorney for that. But I want to talk about a few things of why it's important when it comes to who you choose as your helicopter capture team. And I'll talk about it sort of from the top down. So I am a pilot. I do serve again as a flight instructor, and I help out with the game capture stuff. But a large part of what I do is I sort of serve as the operations manager for our very small company. And part of that role requires me to be on a very regular basis in contact with the FAA. So we are regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration. Any airspace and all airspace is federally regulated, right? So there's no states involved, counties, local governments. It's all regulated by the feds. And so when you start doing multiple different types of business, depending on what that is, there are different sets of regulations and procedures and things that you need to follow. So why is that important for you? And I'm going to go through just a couple of things. I don't want to bore you with these specific details, but when you're hiring a team to come out and perform a job for you, right, you're paying them a fee to come do that. You want to make sure that team is certificated properly. So I want to go through a couple of the things. So when we sling load an animal, right, when we either dart or net that animal and we put them in a bag and then hook them up to our helicopter, we have to have a certification, okay? The FAA calls that a Part 133 external load certificate. And there's a process that you have to go through, and it's a lengthy one. All the way from the application to the demonstration to the experience, right? So they're not going to just give anybody this certificate. You have to prove to an inspector that comes out and he inspects all of the maintenance requirements on your helicopter. You have to keep up with the times on the hook that you're using, pilot credentials, certifications, etc. Right? So I tell people all the time, there's one thing when it comes to proficiency, right? So the pilot obviously needs to be proficient in what they're doing, but legal and certified is a completely different conversation, right? So the person that's coming out there, the team that is conducting this, you really want to make sure that they have this particular certificate that I'm talking about. Again, it's called a Part 133 Rotorcraft External Load Certificate. And layman's terms, makes you legal to haul things with the helicopter. Okay, so that's a long-winded way of saying 133 external load, legal to haul things with the helicopter. You know, that's one of the things is when you're learning how to do this. I remember when I was learning how to sling load, it's, you know, learning how to fly is one thing, Brian can tell you. Learning how to hook the sling bag underneath the helicopter and haul an animal, completely different circumstance. So just wanted to mention that to you that, you know, there are people out there, right, that are conducting business, and not everybody has one of these certificates, right? Again, it's a very lengthy process. One of the things when I came to work for Tango 82 2 years ago was sort of working through, and I'm going to go through this next certificate in a moment, working through how to get some of these additional certificates so that it allows you to do more and more services, offer more services to the public. So I covered the 133. The next one I want to talk about is the 135. Okay, this is sort of what I helped my boss Chavi kind of build from the ground up, and that's the ability to basically transport people from place to place. So a good example would be if you wanted to fly from here at Joshua Creek and fly to Dallas-Fort Worth for whatever. The FAA considers that you are an air carrier if you are transporting people from one place to another. Why does that matter in here, right? So I don't want to get too deep in the woods. What that means that we are an air carrier is the FAA is pretty much on my back 24/7. They're coming to our hangar, they're doing inspections, it's constant paperwork, really under just a lot of like microscope oversight, if you will. So why does that matter to you out here in this room? Our maintenance is top notch. If you are with if you have a 135 certificate, you are on a specific maintenance program that they are really like looking heavily into you and making sure that the things that you are doing is not just to the standard, but really you stand above. Like if the bar is here, you're going to stand above that bar. The 135 certificate is very, very difficult to get, and so I feel like that sort of put us in an area where if you know you're coming to hire us, you know what the maintenance is going to be like. So the next thing I want to talk about for you specifically is has to do with Texas Parks and Wildlife. So in the state of Texas, if you are going to do a pig hunt, if you're going to catch axis deer, if you're going to do anything involved with wildlife out of that helicopter, you have to fill out what is referred to as a landowner agreement, commonly referred to as LOA. Okay? The LOA is basically stating, and it's a matter of public record, so I want you to hear me on this. It's stating the activity that you're going to be conducting on that particular event. Whether you're out shooting hogs or you're catching kudu or sable, whatever it is, all of that stuff is listed on there, and that is, again, a matter of public record. So it is a legal requirement within the state of Texas, okay? So we talked about FAA regulates us as an aviation company federally. The state of Texas regulates this part as it is accustomed to the animal side of it, okay? So filling out one of these LOAs, knowing that it's done correctly, knowing that it's done with all of the animals on there, that you're going to be, you know, whatever the job is for that day, is vitally, vitally important. And so we've sort of become, I guess, experts at working with these LOAs because we do them so often. So I really just want to fine tune and hit that point that LOAs are extremely important to think about when you're beginning these jobs. Anything you want to add on that piece?
Yeah, so, you know, for a lot of you out here, you're probably wondering, okay, well, how does this pertain to me? You know, what is this relevant to my operation? I'm not hiring a helicopter. And the reality is that you probably aren't, but you kind of are. So if you are catching animals on your property, as you said, Tango 82 or some other company comes out, most landowners are not thinking about the structural element of how this transaction is working. In other words, you may have made an agreement with a game broker. Some guy that you know, nice guy, maybe he's got a business, maybe he doesn't have a business, he's got a truck and a trailer, you know that for sure, and he's got a dart gun, and he's there to buy animals. Well, he's actually the guy that's hiring Chandler. It's not you. So you've got a guy that's hiring a company to come out and work on your property, and you don't have any idea what's going on. You don't have any idea whether there's a contract in place. You're not asking for a release of liability in most cases. You're not aware of whether a LOA has been signed or entered or any of that. You are disconnected from the process, but it's your land, and it's your animals, and it's your liability. And so one of the biggest reasons that I felt it was important that Chandler come and talk about these things is that these things really, really matter. They really matter when something goes wrong. And if you don't pay attention, there are things that go wrong occasionally when it comes to flying helicopters in this state. There are accidents, they do happen. It is unfortunate, it is a reality, and it does happen. And when you're talking about the LOA, Chandler talked about this being public knowledge. So through a Freedom of Information request, you can go pull the data related to all the LOAs that are being filed with Parks and Wildlife, and that data dictates what can and cannot be done from that helicopter. And so what's included is, it's the company that's doing the work, it's the species that they're catching, it designates the quantity that they are stipulating that they can catch, and there's a time frame in which that's allowed to be done. It could be, I think, as long as a year, Chandler. So an LOA can be filed for a period of a year. So with that being said, let's just say you have an LOA filed and it's only for 4 species, and you have a game broker that comes out and they end up catching 2 species that are not on the LOA. This has the potential to be a problem. It has the potential to be a legal problem. And let's just say, for example, on the LOA, there's 5 species that are listed, and the person that's in the helicopter darting those animals is using drugs to catch whatever animal they're catching, but it's not the species listed on that LOA. These are the kinds of regulatory issues that are starting to show up in our industry today. These are the things that game wardens are looking for. So when a game warden shows up at your ranch to inspect what's going on, they ask Chandler or Chavi for the LOA. They want a copy of it. They also want a copy of the aerial wildlife management permit. And if you're slinging an animal, just by a show of hands, I'm curious, has anybody ever had a helicopter come out, fly on their ranch, they're catching animals and they're slinging them, and they tell you, do not make a video or pictures of us moving the animal when it's on a sling? Has anybody ever had that happen? It's most likely because they don't have a permit. That is the most likely reason why. So it's not that they're worried that someone's going to see Ed the zebra floating through the sky with a muzzle on his face. So we might have had something to do with that. So that's not what they're worried about. They're worried that they don't have a permit to do that activity. And so let's just say something goes wrong. Like, let's just say something bad happens. Let's just say that rope ends up getting hung up on a windmill or a tower or a power line or any of those things. You probably haven't thought through what the liability is for you. You probably haven't thought through whether or not you have a contract with this particular company, or whether you have a contract with that game broker, whether that game broker has any assets for those people that got hurt to go after. And so the reason I had Chandler come here is I really, really, really hope that all of you, when it comes to making decisions about selling your animals, that you start asking these important questions. Your entire net worth has the ability to be exposed if you're not structuring these things correctly. If you're not making a contract and structuring it in the proper way, and you're not making sure that the LOA is filed, and you're not making sure that the species that are outlined are the ones that are being caught, all of these things have legal ramifications. These are not civil legal ramifications. These have the potential to be criminal legal ramifications. And so anybody that's in the whitetail deer breeding business has probably experienced at some point in time where they have this hobby or this thing that's supposed to be fun, and somehow they messed up on record keeping, and suddenly you've got Parks and Wildlife threatening you with criminal prosecution. Like, it's not fun. I've seen it happen to people. And so don't overlook the detail when you are hiring someone to come onto your property with a helicopter to capture animals. Ask the questions before they show up. Get the liability releases signed before they show up. Ask for a copy of the LOA before they show up and before they start doing the work. Make sure that they have the permits that Chandler talked about to do this work. And if someone says, don't video us while we're slinging, you probably should have asked the question a lot sooner. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what Chandler and I talked about. If anybody has any questions, feel free to fire off. I don't know if Chandler has a couple more things to go over.
I actually have no, I had a list full of notes here, and now you covered everything.
Okay. Does anybody have any? Well, look, these things are really important to me, and I'll tell you why they're important to me. People die in helicopters. I'm learning to fly right now, and I can tell you I'm not even prepared to be able to fly on my own. I'm not even close. But I see people that end up in accidents, and there's families left behind. And then there's lawyers rallying around, and there's somebody that's going to end up getting hit with those liabilities. Like, this is the world we live in. It's a very litigious society that we're in. And so it's important that you're paying attention to this stuff versus, hey, this guy that I made the deal with to sell these 10 Gemsbach that's going to pay me X amount. Cool, he's showing up with a helicopter. We're going to be able to make a video and my kids are going to get to see it and it's great and fun. That's all great and it's true. But we're business people. We would never operate our companies like this. We would never take our hard-earned money and go invest it with a financial services company without doing some homework to make sure that they're legitimate and to make sure that they're going to do a good job. We would never do that. But we're letting people come onto our properties. We're doing no work to make sure that the people that are there are insured, that they're licensed, that they have all the things that they need to have in place. And the result is we're putting our whole net worth at risk when we do it. And it's too easy to solve this problem, but it's a lack of information that's being presented that's causing the liability. And the point of this discussion is to say, don't do that anymore. Like, don't do that anymore. Like, just dot your I's and cross your T's and protect yourselves, because the risk is going to show up, and it may show up on your place. Hopefully it doesn't, but it will show up eventually.
So the 133, is that required bonded additionally, or are we the landowner securing additional insurance and liability?
So the 133 is basically just for us as the company, right? So that's just basically so that our company, Tango 82, can't receive any sort of ramification from the FAA, like a fine or, worse. It wouldn't apply really to the landowner itself. That would be more of like an insurance type thing.
Yeah, so the 133, all that does is it says that the person and the helicopter that are flying have the ability to sling an animal from a rope in order to get it to the trailer. Without that permit, you're not legally allowed to do that. But people do it all the time. So if it's being done and something goes wrong and there's an accident, it is in large part going to fall on the helicopter company.
Yeah,
But-
they're gonna come after whoever's
But,
flying.
but they're not gonna go just after the helicopter company, they're gonna go after the landowner, they're gonna go after anybody that has assets, that's who they're gonna go after. That's why the contracts are important and the release of liabilities are important. And we're gonna have a discussion about insurance specifically after lunch. But to answer your question, the indemnification, the releases of liability are completely separate from the 133. The 133 just gives the helicopter the ability to sling an animal.
Right, but the indemnification of warranties and liabilities associated with the action you're signing off on it, I mean, because the 133 is, should be regulated by that. I mean, that's the, form of the contract, you're signing that agreement. Because that, because I would be, very focused on liabilities and
Yeah,
just warranties.
so this goes back to the question of who is it that is hiring him? And what I've seen, it's not the landowner 90% of the time. It's the broker. The broker that's showing up to buy those animals is the one that calls Tango 82, schedules the helicopter, files the LOA, and shows up. The landowner doesn't have an agreement. There's no contract between a landowner and this company in most cases, and it shouldn't be that way.
So in this case, I'm speaking for myself, if I'm wanting to move.
Yeah, you would just want to get a lawyer to craft a contract that satisfies the liability releases that you're looking for. And everyone is going to be a little different, but you know, the point is again, it's to switch on and to say, I'm not going to let this company come out and perform this work on my property without having some type of protection, whether it's housed. And it goes back to this thing of doing it individually or doing it through an entity. If you're doing it through an entity, you have some protections, but if you're doing it individually, you have no protections. And so if there is no contract, it's up to whatever it is that that lawyer chasing your money is going to be able to prove in court. And if you don't have a contract, he is going to basically say that it's you individually and come after everything you own. So it's just a matter of switching on and starting to go through the process of saying, before I allow these activities to happen on my ranch, I'm going to go through this process of every other thing I do in life, where we have agreements and we have protections to make sure that we don't get ourselves in a jam. So that's the point of this discussion. So, any other questions?
Isn't there also some sort of provision that don't have these in place, like, cruelty, classing, misdemeanor, or something like that, or like disturbing wildlife?
I believe if you don't, I think what you're referring to is if you don't have the LOA. Yeah, landowner agreement. I believe that is correct. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, I mean, there are ramifications where, yeah, you can be prosecuted if you don't have the LOA in place. I'm not exactly sure what those are, Brian.
Well, Warren, if you fly without an LOA, is that civil or is it criminal?
It's criminal.
It's criminal. It's a class A or B misdemeanor.
And they will enforce it. And to your point about,
Well, Warren is a retired game warden, so you know.
so well, long time back. But anyway, to your point, so we have a favorite saying that we operate on all the time. It came from a guy named Red Dare, who was a world famous firefighter. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait till you hire an amateur to do your job.
So you are required to have the LOA, and I can tell you that I've been in many situations where the game warden shows up when we're catching animals, and they ask for the LOA, and they ask for the aerial wildlife management permit. They ask for it, and if the pilot doesn't have those things, there's going to be problems. So, and I'm sure there's many times where it's being done and there's no LOA that's been filed.
So another really interesting point about the job that you do that didn't happen 15 years ago is the baby boomers have all sold ranches now. And what happens is about 9 out of 10 times if we're flying a property, we get a phone call from another adjoining landowner that came from parts of wildlife because they don't know what's going on, because they don't understand the business. And so the incident of inspection has gone up and up and up.
Yes, Nash?
Do you see there possibly being an issue when you're talking about liability and things getting into courts? Would it matter, like, where the ranch is versus where your NC LLC place of business is associated address-wise for a jurisdiction aspect of where it would go to court?
I couldn't speak to that. I mean, lawyers fight over jurisdiction and venue all the time, so I couldn't say in any specific situation. I mean, obviously everybody's gonna fight to be in the venue they wanna be in, so they're gonna make whatever case they can make to get there, so I can't answer the question. Any other questions? We breaking for lunch after this one? Are we doing the
Right.
question and answers?
Brian, quick question for you.
Paul is next.
Here's
Yes.
just one more. Do you use the same release of liability whether they're in a helicopter or not for animal capture?
Again, it comes down to the individual. You're just going to want to craft your own liability language or get a lawyer to do that for you. But at the end of the day, you can include whatever you want, whether it's someone flying or whether it's just someone there darting on the ground. You just want to have a robust liability release. And the other thing I would say is, you always have the ability to ask for you to be named as the additionally insured on their policy. And they may or may not do that, and you may find that most of the people that are out catching game don't have insurance.
That piece of the additional insured, I know is something we've been asked for, not just in the game capture piece, but like I said, we do a lot of charter flights and stuff where we land at some of these, really expensive wineries and stuff, and that's become sort of a commonplace now that,
So another question for you, do you furnish ground crew?
yes, sir, we do.
Do y'all's ground crew, are they all under workers' comp?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, that's a really important point to bring up too.
Yeah, so I didn't want to, I know there's a conversation on insurance that's going to be later, and I don't want to extend this, but just, and I'm not here to try to promote Tango 82. I mean, I'm really here to try to, as I stated before, and you can probably tell, I am nowhere near as versed as he is on the legal side of it, but as I look at it from a top-down approach, right, you want to make sure that all of the pilots are certificated, you want to make sure that the helicopters are in good maintenance, running order, you want to make sure that all the necessary certifications for the work that you're doing, the company has, and then finally, the piece he just mentioned, as I know there's going to be a conversation on insurance later, is I don't know how much we spend on insurance a year. I know it's a lot. And we're one of the only companies, at least in our business, what we're doing, where Chavi's really investing the money now, back to his point on the workers' comp piece of it. I'm pretty sure we have every piece of insurance that we could buy. I'm not certain on that, but we go to that next level, to your point. Not a lot of other people are doing that.
Do y'all furnish a certificate of insurance to your clients? Do they ever ask for request of you?
That would be a Chavi question. I don't know that anybody's ever asked me for it, but that would be something that could be easily done. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, I worry less about the guy flying the helicopter than I do about the guy driving the ATV on the ground. He's 20, whatever age he is, and he is not, he's the one that's, the guy that's learned how to fly a helicopter doesn't worry me as much as the guy that's leaning out taking the shot, doesn't worry me as much as the guy on the ground with an ATV doing silly things on the ground.
And going back to Ward's question, the vast majority of the crews that are out there, that person is not an employee covered by workers' comp. And so you're not protected by the limitations from a legal standpoint. So if something goes wrong, there's no limit to the amount that lawsuit can end up at because it's not covered under workers' comp. So I agree with you. And again, this is subject matter that's just not discussed. It doesn't come up very often in the ordinary course of what we do, despite the fact that this industry has been going on for decades. But we have grown from this sleepy little hobby, fun industry into a meaningful, real business. This is a real industry now. We're contributing billions of dollars of economic impact to our state, and we have to become more sophisticated in order to be able to protect the freedoms that we have within our industry, because if we don't, you can be sure regulation is going to show up and they're going to do it for us. And so I just think these subjects are critically important for us to start thinking about, because who wants to be in a position where this thing that's supposed to be fun and exciting and enjoyable, and you're doing something great for conservation and you're saving money on taxes, turns into You have a $50 million judgment against you because someone got hurt and they weren't covered by workers' comp and there is no insurance and it falls on your back. Like, who wants that? And these are the risks associated with not making sure that we operate this as an efficient business.
You talked about, or people about liability in animals, you said accidents happen. You know, I'm saying it happens all the time with animals die here after.
Well, that really depends on the deal you made with the person that's buying them. So in the case of our company, when we buy animals, we contract for those animals before we show up. If it gets killed, we pay for it. If it gets hurt, we pay for it. That is not the case with most of the people that are buying animals in the industry. And it comes down to the deal you make. You know, if you're making a deal with someone and they are not taking responsibility for death loss, you shouldn't be paying them, or they should be paying you more for the animal because you're carrying the risk. Whereas someone else that's taking the risk, they're gonna wanna buy the animal for a little less money because at the end of the day, it's their responsibility if something dies. So it's like any other agreement, you know, depending upon who's getting what and who's taking what risk, that dictates the price of the contract. So it's entirely up to you how you do that. And everybody's a little different. Some people are totally happy taking the risk, and other people, they don't want to take the risk. And then there's people that will tell you that they're going to take the risk, but they don't have any money. So it's like, you know, if you got some 25-year-old guy that's ambitious as hell and working his tail off and doing a great job and you're proud of him, but he's out there catching animals and he tells you he's going to take death loss, but he's catching kudu and sable, well, find out whether he's got 50 or 60 grand sitting around to pay for it if something goes wrong. You know, so these are the questions that are important to ask in every step of this process. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Chandler. You did a remarkable job, professional speaker.
Good luck, everyone.